Hi, this is John Carrots, and I'm here with OSH Radio on YouTube with Master George Lepin. I'm sorry. See, I said I'd get it right, and I got it wrong. But he's the master instructor up here in Toronto of OKICHITAW. And if you could tell us a little bit about your art and how it got started, that would be great.
Yeah, well, OKICHITAW comes from a Plains Cree word known as OKICHITAW of worthy men. So I'm of Plains Cree, Assiniboine, and French descent. I'm from an area known as Treaty 1 territory, which is in about central Canada and the United States. So that the martial art that we teach here is based on the combative tactics of that region and that era prior and post-contact. So it's based on Plains warfare style applications. OKICHITAW is an indigenous martial art that adopts the concepts of hand-to-hand combat with a fusion of four primary weapons. One is Jukunakinis, which is the tomahawk. Second one is Mokiman, which is the knife. Shukukwan, which is the lance or the battle lance. And Notinit Tone, the stick, which is the gunstock war club. So those four weapons are all derivatives of how the concept of the system comes together. Now, OKICHITAW historically was always taught through other forms of rites of passage. For example, prior to learning warfare, you learned harvesting. We talk to our youth nowadays about the challenges and difficulties that we had historically with respect to learning this martial art. And a lot of this had to do with understanding buffalo hunting, skinning, doing different things like that, which were very graphic at a very young age. So once you moved into an area of rites of passage, it was usually anywhere between 11 and 13 years old, you started learning concepts of warfare. So you already had an idea how the bow worked, you already had an idea how knives worked, how lances to some extent worked, but now we start moving that person to battle concepts, hand-to-hand engagements, those types of things. So a lot of this art was passed by uncles, brothers, warrior societies, different individuals within the society. So I come from a society, not a clan system, a society, so it's quite different in the West. And so the Buffalo Society, which I'm a part of, were heavily influenced by buffalo hunting and engagements at that quarter. So our territory at that time would have crossed the border between Manitoba and North Dakota. And so that whole territory, so we had our conflicts with the Sioux, for example. A lot of times in the 1800s, my family were involved in conflicts right up to 1854 with respect to that. And then after contact, actually happened before that, but post-contact, we were involved with direct engagements with respect to the Red River Resistance and the Northwest Rebellion. And so my grandfather, one of my ancestors, was the Adjutant General for a lot of the activities that were done at that time. So what I basically did with my martial art background, because I hold dans in 2 or 3 different martial arts. I don't hold a black in judo, but I got close to that in judo. I hold a 5th in taekwondo and a 5th in hapkido. And what I decided to do at that time with everything that I was learning as a young boy was to be able to put the structure into a concept of martial art that we could truly call our own, and do it in such a way that we could teach it through a modern concept. Because one of the problems was that we can't do the same things that we did historically. We can't hunt on horseback. We can't arbitrarily go up and count coup, or what we call pakama and Cree, go out and strike someone that we don't like and see if they're going to do anything back to us. Those things are just prohibited in our modern society. So how do we take a martial art, no different than any other martial art that historically was from a martial or battle concept, and be able to put it into an application where we could teach it to people both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and that's what we came through. Now the thing is we were doing this well into probably my uncles and that were doing it in the 70s and into the 80s, but it wasn't until we had a major conflict in Canada that was outside of our community known as OKA, and this was a major event that occurred in 1990. And after that event, there was the Commission on the Royal Commission on Aboriginal People in Canada that basically identified that for us to really build relationships up between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities, we had to actually start going through a process of reconciliation. And so that activity forced us into a position, or put us into a position, where we decided to step forward and start sharing this martial art outside of our Indigenous community. And so we've started doing that probably in the early 90s. We've been doing it, so we've had, as I mentioned earlier, well over 1,500 people go through the program. We continue to this very day. And OKICHITAW is it means force with force. It uses a lot of momentum. It uses a lot of the environment for contact. So although we train indoors quite often, we also do a lot of tactics outside, and everything is based on that concept. So what we try to do is be very disciplined in the area of, if we are using that weapon, how would we have used it historically, and how can we still use it today? If we lose that weapon, what did we do historically? We didn't go to some fancy hand techniques or very prescriptive type of applications. They were very large motor skills, aggressive force, and those types of concepts. When I talk about counting coup, as I said earlier, we counted coup not just by touching our enemy, but we also could hit them with a horse. We could go up to their defensive works, touch their defensive works, kill the first individual that was taken down in battle from our enemy. We could walk up and touch them. All these different things. So we try to build that philosophy and the concept into OKICHITAW, and utilizing my historic ancestry to be able to talk about some of the things that were taught to me when I was young, the stories that were carried on, looking at it from a martial art perspective when we're looking at different writings and different things that were written down, whether it was from the non-Indigenous community. As a martial artist, how do you read that? How do you look at that and disseminate it? Pull out that racism and say, okay, what technically or tactically were they doing in that application? And so that's what I did. I took quite a few years to do that. So that happened to me quite a bit through the 80s. So I was anywhere from along the Missouri all the way to Bismarck, North Dakota, like Fargo, down near Pine Ridge, up near Emerson, Pembina, out towards Saskatchewan, places like that. Everything from a small reference library to a big one, and looking at a lot of this information. And I really came down to basic tactics of saying, this is the way we did our hand-to-hand. It was also a concept of proving yourselves in combat. And so a lot of that knowledge, I want to make sure that we don't lose any of it. I want to make sure that we carry on this information, so even when I move on to the spirit world, that this tactic and the concept of OKICHITAW still continues to this very day. And so, like I said, we've shared it with a lot of people. We continue to do so, and especially during a time of truth and reconciliation, it's more important than ever before.
Well, thank you. And I watching the class today was very enjoyable. I liked the whole atmosphere of it and stuff you went over, and it was very interesting. And I would recommend other people maybe that watch this, look it up. You have a website, I believe.
Yeah. OKICHITAW.com. Yeah.
And also there is a way you can get videos at home and stuff. I believe one of your other students runs that.
One of my other students is on Patreon. He's also teaching some classes as well. Myself as the chief instructor, I like teaching in person. I actually really follow the way of our ancestors by, I will show you, and I also teach, nothing that I teach, I can't do myself. So I always make sure that's a really, really important concept as well. And that, people are welcome to our training lodge anytime, just like yourself. You dropped in, we got to make a new relationship and, share a
Hopefully
story.
this will last, and it's good to put a face to things I've seen and actually meet the person I've seen. Like I said, I joined the online thing and get the videos and enjoy that very much too.
Awesome.
And I'm glad to get to meet you and also get to do this little interview so other people can find out what you're doing and make a trip up to Toronto and check it out.
If you're in the territory, drop on by.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh.